The world came back to me in fragments, a kaleidoscope of white ceiling tiles, the steady beep of monitors, and the antiseptic smell that clung to hospital air like a promise of sterility that could never quite be kept. My mouth felt like cotton, my thoughts swimming through the thick fog of anesthesia. The baby. The thought hit me like lightning, cutting through the pharmaceutical haze with maternal urgency. My hand instinctively moved to my stomach, finding it soft and empty beneath the hospital gown, the skin loose and tender where life had been carved from me just hours before. David. My voice came out as a croak, barely audible even to my own ears. The recovery room was dimly lit, machines humming their electronic lullabies around me. Through the medication-induced blur, I could make out a figure in the chair beside my bed. David was there, just as he'd promised he would be, cradling a small bundle against his chest. Relief flooded through me, warm and overwhelming. But something was wrong. Through the corner of my vision, I caught sight of movement. A woman sat hunched in the chair by the window, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Her dark hair fell like a curtain around her face. But even in my drugged state, something about her posture, her presence, felt jarringly out of place. David. I tried again, stronger this time. He looked up, his face a mask I couldn't quite read through the fog. Hey, sweetheart. You're awake. The baby, I started to say, reaching toward the bundle in his arms. There's been a situation, he said, his voice carefully controlled. Sarah, I need you to stay calm. Sarah. The woman by the window looked up at the sound of her name, and even through my blurred vision, I could see the tear tracks on her cheeks, the raw desperation in her eyes. My heart began to race, the monitors beside me picking up the acceleration with increasingly urgent beeps. Where's my baby? The question tore from my throat, louder than I'd intended. David's jaw tightened. That's what we need to talk about. The nurse who entered moments later was all crisp efficiency and practiced sympathy, her scrubs decorated with tiny cartoon storks that seemed almost mocking under the circumstances. She checked my vitals while David continued to hold the baby, a baby, that I was becoming increasingly certain wasn't mine. Mrs. Martinez, the nurse said, her voice taking on that particular tone medical professionals used when delivering bad news they'd rehearsed. I'm afraid there's been an unprecedented situation. My blood felt like ice water. What kind of situation? Due to a series of unfortunate circumstances in our nursery tonight, there was a mix-up. She couldn't quite meet my eyes. Your baby was given to another family by mistake. The words hit me like a physical blow. What do you mean, given to another family? The baby your husband is holding, she continued, glancing at David with something that might have been confusion, belongs to Ms. Rodriguez here. She gestured toward the crying woman by the window. She gave birth approximately 30 minutes after you did. I stared at David, waiting for him to explode with righteous fury, to demand answers, to move heaven and earth to find our child. Instead, he sat perfectly still, that same unreadable expression on his face. Where is my baby? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. That's what we're working to determine, the nurse replied. We believe she may have been discharged with the family who should have received this little one. She nodded toward the infant in David's arms. We're reviewing all the paperwork now. Discharged. I struggled to sit up, ignoring the sharp pain that shot through my incision. You mean someone took my baby home? Mrs. Martinez, please try to remain calm. We're doing everything we can to. Don't tell me to remain calm. The shout scraped my throat raw. Someone has my baby. That's when I noticed David hadn't said a word. Not one word of protest or demand for action. He just sat there, holding someone else's child, looking almost guilty. David, say something. Do something. They gave our baby to strangers. He finally met my eyes, and what I saw there made my stomach drop. Sarah, I think you need to hear the whole story. The nurse cleared her throat. Perhaps I should give you some privacy, Al. No, I said sharply. Stay. I want witnesses to whatever my husband is about to tell me. David shifted the baby to his other arm, and I noticed how naturally he held her, how comfortable he seemed. The family who has our baby, they're not exactly strangers. What do you mean? He took a breath that seemed to last forever. The woman who took Emma home. It's Lisa. Lisa. His ex-girlfriend. The one he'd dated for 3 years before we met. The one who'd wanted to get back together when she'd heard about our engagement. The one who'd showed up at our wedding uninvited and had to be escorted out by security. Lisa was here? Having a baby? The timeline was spinning in my head, nothing making sense. Sarah, he said, his voice impossibly gentle, Lisa's baby. The baby she had tonight. It's mine. The world tilted sideways. The silence that followed David's confession was absolute, broken only by the steady beep of machines and the soft whimpering of the baby in his arms. The woman by the window, Sofia Rodriguez, I now understood, looked between us with growing alarm, as if she was beginning to piece together that this was much more than a simple hospital mix-up. "What did you say?" My voice came out flat, emotionless. The part of my brain responsible for processing shock seemed to have simply shut down. David set the baby gently in the bassinet beside my bed, his movements careful and deliberate. "Sarah, I know how this sounds." "Do you?" I interrupted. "Because I'm not sure you do. I think it sounds like you've been having an affair with your ex-girlfriend, got her pregnant, and somehow orchestrated this whole situation so that she could take our baby home while you—" "What? Playhouse with her child? It's not like that, eh?" "Then explain it." My voice was getting stronger, fueled by a rage that was burning through the anesthesia like acid. "Explain to me how your ex-girlfriend coincidentally gave birth on the same night as your wife, in the same hospital, and somehow our babies got switched." The nurse had gone very still, her eyes wide. Sofia Rodriguez had stopped crying and was watching us with a mixture of horror and fascination. David ran his hands through his hair, a gesture I'd seen him make 1,000 times when he was trying to buy time to think. "Lisa contacted me about 8 months ago. She was pregnant, and she said the baby was mine." 8 months ago. I did the math quickly. I was already pregnant. We were already married. I didn't believe her at first. I thought she was lying, trying to break us up. But she showed me the ultrasound, the dates. He trailed off. "Did you sleep with her?" The question came out sharper than a blade. He couldn't look at me. "Yes." "When?" "Sarah." "When, David?" "The night before our wedding." The world didn't just tilt this time, it completely inverted. The night before our wedding. While I was at home with my bridesmaids, getting my nails done and going over last-minute details, he was with her. While I was lying in bed, too excited to sleep, imagining our future together, he was betraying everything we built. "You son of a bitch," I whispered. "Sarah, please, let me explain." "Oh, you're going to explain," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "You're going to explain all of it. Starting with how a simple hospital mix-up turned into your ex-girlfriend walking out of here with my baby." He glanced at the nurse, who was looking increasingly uncomfortable. "Maybe we should." "No," I cut him off. "She stays. They all stay. I want witnesses to every word you say from now on." David's shoulders slumped in defeat. "Lisa had been texting me throughout your pregnancy. She wanted me to leave you, to be with her and the baby. I told her no, that I was committed to you, to our marriage." "How noble of you," I said sarcastically. "When she found out you were giving birth at the same hospital where she was registered, she had an idea." The room went dead silent except for the sound of my heart hammering against my ribs. "What kind of idea, David?" "She thought, if there was some kind of mix-up, if somehow our babies got switched, that maybe that you'd want to keep her baby, and she could keep ours, and maybe we could all figure out some kind of arrangement." "You're telling me," I said, each word precisely articulated, "that you and your ex-girlfriend planned to steal my baby." "It wasn't stealing," he said quickly. "It was more like a trade." "A trade?" I stared at him. "You wanted to trade our daughter for your bastard child with your ex-girlfriend." Sofia Rodriguez gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The nurse took a step backward, as if physical distance could remove her from this nightmare. "Sarah, that's not—" "Where is she?" I asked. "Where is my daughter?" "She's safe," he said. "Lisa took her home. She's being well cared for." "She's being kidnapped," I screamed, loud enough to bring running footsteps from the hallway. "Call the police. Call them now." "Mrs. Martinez," the nurse said, her training finally kicking in, "I think we need to get security up here." And "No," David said, standing up abruptly. "No police. Not yet." Something in his tone made everyone freeze. "There's more," he said quietly. "There's something else you need to know." Security arrived within minutes, 2 guards who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else than mediating what was clearly a domestic crisis of epic proportions. Behind them came Dr. Patterson, the obstetrician who delivered Emma just hours earlier, her face grave with the kind of concern that made my blood run cold. "Mrs. Martinez," Dr. Patterson said, approaching my bed with careful steps, "I understand there's been some confusion about the babies." "Confusion?" I laughed, a sound that came out sharp and broken. "Is that what we're calling kidnapping now?" "Sarah," David said, his voice carrying a warning I'd never heard before, "please let Dr. Patterson speak." "Actually," the doctor said, glancing between us, I think your husband has something he needs to tell you first. Something that might help explain the situation. I looked at David, who had gone pale. What now? What else could there possibly be? He sat back down heavily, as if his legs couldn't support him anymore. The DNA test, he said quietly. What DNA test? The one Lisa had done during her pregnancy. She wanted to prove the baby was mine. And the results came back last week. I waited, every muscle in my body tense. The baby. Sophia's baby. He gestured toward the infant in the bassinet, then looked at Sophia Rodriguez, who was watching us with growing alarm. She's not Lisa's biological child. The room went completely silent. What do you mean? Sophia asked, speaking for the first time since I'd woken up. David turned to her, his face full of an emotion I couldn't identify. Ms. Rodriguez, I'm sorry. I should have told you this privately, but... He took a shaky breath. The baby you gave birth to tonight isn't genetically yours. Sophia stared at him as if he'd started speaking a foreign language. That's impossible. I carried her for 9 months. I felt her kick. I pushed her out of my body. I know, David said gently. But the DNA doesn't lie. Whose baby is she then? I asked, though part of me was already beginning to understand, and the understanding was making me sick. She's yours, Sarah. Biologically, she's yours. The world tilted again, but this time in a different direction. That's impossible. No, Dr. Patterson said quietly, it's not. It's extremely rare, but not impossible. I stared at her. Are you talking about what I think you're talking about? We believe, the doctor said carefully, that there was an embryo mix-up during your IVF procedure 8 months ago. The words hit me like a physical blow. David and I had struggled with infertility for 2 years before turning to IVF. I'd gone through 3 rounds of treatment, the last one finally successful. You're saying, I said slowly, that when they implanted the embryo in me, they gave me someone else's baby? That's our working theory, yes. I looked at Sophia Rodriguez, who was staring at the baby in the bassinet with a mixture of love and horror. And the embryo that should have been mine was implanted in Ms. Rodriguez. Sophia's voice came out as a whisper. But I didn't have IVF. I got pregnant naturally. Dr. Patterson and David exchanged a look that made my stomach drop even further. Ms. Rodriguez, the doctor said gently, there's something else. The hospital records show that you were treated here 8 months ago for fertility issues. No, Sophia said, shaking her head. No, that's not right. I've never, she stopped, her face going white. Miguel. Who's Miguel? I asked. My boyfriend. My ex-boyfriend. She was talking to herself now, the pieces clicking together. He said he was taking me to see a specialist about some irregular periods. But I was so out of it that day, they gave me something for anxiety, and I don't really remember. The room fell silent as the implication sank in. You're telling me, I said to Dr. Patterson, that both of our embryos were switched 8 months ago, and now both of our biological children were born tonight? That appears to be the case, yes. I looked at David, who hadn't said a word during this revelation. And you knew this? I suspected, he admitted. When Lisa told me about the DNA test, about how the baby wasn't mine but was somehow connected to you. I started putting pieces together. So you orchestrated this whole thing, I said, my voice deadly calm. You arranged for Lisa to take Emma home while you stayed here with Sophia's baby, who happens to be mine biologically. Sarah. You son of a bitch, I said. You absolute son of a bitch. But even as I said it, I was looking at the baby in the bassinet, at my baby, the one I'd never carried but who was somehow mine, and feeling something I couldn't name. What followed was chaos. Security called the police. The police called Child Protective Services. CPS called the hospital administration. And through it all, 2 babies lay in their bassinets, completely unaware that their very existence had turned the adult world upside down. I refused to let anyone take Sophia's baby, the one who was biologically mine, out of my sight. Sophia, meanwhile, was having what could only be described as a complete breakdown, alternating between demanding to hold her baby and insisting that none of this could be real. Where's Emma? I kept asking David. Where's my daughter? She's safe, he kept repeating. Lisa's taking good care of her. Lisa kidnapped her. She didn't kidnap her, Sarah. She thought she was taking her own child home. Because you let her think that. I screamed. Because you planned this whole thing. Detective Morrison arrived just after midnight, a tired-looking woman in her 40s who seemed to specialize in cases that made no sense. She listened to our story with the expression of someone who'd heard everything and was no longer surprised by human capacity for making disasters out of simple situations. "Let me get this straight," she said, consulting her notes. 8 months ago, there was an embryo mix-up during IVF procedures. Tonight, both women gave birth within 30 minutes of each other. The babies were then switched in the nursery, and one was discharged to a woman who isn't the biological mother of either child. "That's correct," Dr. Patterson confirmed. "And Mr. Martinez knew about the embryo situation but didn't tell his wife." "I wasn't certain," David protested. "It was just a theory. A theory you decided to test by letting your ex-girlfriend walk out of here with a baby." David didn't have an answer for that. Detective Morrison turned to me. "Mrs. Martinez, what do you want to happen here?" "I want my daughter back," I said immediately. "Emma, the baby I carried and delivered. I want her back right now." "And what about this baby?" She nodded toward the bassinet. "The one who's biologically yours but was carried by Ms. Rodriguez?" I looked at Sophia, who was crying quietly in her chair. "I don't know," I admitted. "I honestly don't know." "This is insane," Sophia said suddenly, her voice thick with tears. "This is absolutely insane. I carried that baby for 9 months. I felt her move. I talked to her every night. I sang to her. And you're telling me she's not mine?" "Genetically, no," Dr. Patterson said gently. "But biology isn't everything." "Biology is everything," Sophia exploded. "It's the only thing that makes sense in this nightmare. If she's not mine, then whose baby did I lose? Where's my real child?" The question hung in the air like a sword. "Your biological child," I said slowly, "is the baby who was born from my body. Emma, the one Lisa took home." Sophia stared at me, and I could see the exact moment when the full horror of the situation hit her. "So the baby I think is mine is actually yours, and the baby I actually am mine is with some woman I've never met?" "Lisa's not some random woman," David said. She's your ex-girlfriend who you cheated with and who has stolen a baby," Sophia shouted. "I don't care who she is to you." Detective Morrison held up her hands. "Okay, let's all take a breath here. This is clearly a complex situation that's going to require legal intervention, court orders, and probably months of hearings to sort out properly." "Months," I said. "I'm not waiting months to get my daughter back." "Which daughter?" the detective asked quietly. The question stopped me cold. "Which daughter? Emma, the baby I'd carried and delivered and bonded with during pregnancy? Or this baby, the one sleeping peacefully in the bassinet, who shared my DNA but had been carried by another woman?" "Both," I said finally. "Both of them are my daughters. And both of them are mine," Sophia said, her voice breaking. "The one I carried and the one who came from my body." We stared at each other across the small room. Two mothers caught in an impossible situation that no amount of law or medicine or common sense could easily resolve. "There's precedent for this," Dr. Patterson said quietly. "Cases where embryos have been mixed up. The courts usually try to prioritize the best interests of the children, taking into account both biological and gestational relationships." "What does that mean in plain English?" I asked. "It means," Detective Morrison said, "that a judge is going to have to decide who gets which baby. And it's going to be messy." That's when David finally spoke up. "There might be another option." We all turned to look at him. "What if," he said carefully, "we didn't have to choose?" David's suggestion hung in the air like a live wire that nobody wanted to touch. The idea of not choosing, of somehow sharing both babies, seemed both completely logical and absolutely insane. "What exactly are you proposing?" Detective Morrison asked. "Joint custody," David said. "Both babies, both mothers. We figure out some kind of arrangement that works for everyone." "Are you out of your mind?" I stared at him. "You want me to share my children with a complete stranger?" "Sarah's not a stranger," Sophia said quietly. "She's the biological mother of the baby I've been carrying. And I'm the biological mother of the baby she carried." "That doesn't make us family," I shot back. "Doesn't it?" Sophia asked. "What does make us family, if not this?" The question caught me off guard. What'd make a family? Was it genetics? Was it the 9 months of pregnancy, feeling kicks, and talking to the baby growing inside you? Was it the moment of birth, the first time you held your child? Or was it something else entirely? Love, commitment, the daily act of caring for another human being? "This is crazy," I said, but with less conviction than before. "The whole situation is crazy," Sophia replied. "But maybe crazy is what we need right now." Detective Morrison was taking notes, her expression thoughtful. This would have to go through the courts regardless. Joint custody of children between unmarried, unrelated parties is unprecedented. So is this entire situation, Dr. Patterson pointed out. I looked at the baby in the bassinet, at Mia. Sophia had named her, though I'd been thinking of her as baby girl Rodriguez in my head. She was sleeping peacefully, her tiny fist pressed against her cheek. She had David's nose, I realized with a start. She was genetically mine, but she looked like him. Where's Emma right now? I asked David. With Lisa. At her apartment. Is she safe? Yes, she's safe. Lisa might be a lot of things, but she's not going to hurt a baby. She's not going to give her up easily either, is she? David was quiet for a long moment. No, she's not. So even if Sophia and I agreed to some kind of joint arrangement, I said, thinking out loud, we'd still have to get Emma back from Lisa. Lisa doesn't have any legal right to that baby, Detective Morrison said. Regardless of who the biological parents are, she took a child that wasn't legally hers from a hospital. That's kidnapping. But she didn't know, David protested. She thought she was taking her own child home. Because you let her think that, I said. Because you planned this whole thing. I didn't plan anything, David said, but his voice lacked conviction. I wanted to see what would happen. You wanted to see what would happen? I repeated incredulously. With our children? With our lives? I was confused, Sarah. I was scared. I didn't know how to handle any of this. So you handled it by lying to everyone and letting your ex-girlfriend kidnap a baby. She didn't kidnap. Stop saying that. I exploded. Stop defending her. She has my daughter, David. She has Emma, and she's not going to give her back willingly, and you know it. The room fell silent except for the soft sounds of Mia sleeping and Sophia crying quietly in her chair. What do you want? Sophia asked me suddenly. What? What do you want to happen here? If you could wave a magic wand and make this situation exactly what you wanted, what would it look like? I thought about it. What did I want? I want Emma back, I said immediately. I want my daughter, the one I carried and delivered, back in my arms. Okay. And then what? And then? I looked at Mia, sleeping peacefully in her bassinet. I don't know. Do you want her? Sophia asked, nodding toward Mia. Do you want to raise your biological daughter? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. Of course I wanted her. She was mine, genetically speaking. But she was also Sophia's in every way that mattered. Sophia had carried her, nurtured her, brought her into the world. Do you want Emma? I asked Sophia in return. Sophia's face crumpled. I don't know. She's my biological child, but she's not the baby I've been talking to for 9 months. She's not the baby I've been preparing for. She's a stranger to me. But she's still yours, I said softly. And Mia is still yours, Sophia replied. We looked at each other across the room, two women bound together by the most bizarre circumstances imaginable, each holding a piece of the other's heart without knowing how it gotten there. So what do we do? I asked. I think, Sophia said slowly, we start by getting Emma back. And then we figure out the rest. Detective Morrison looked up from her notes. Mrs. Martinez, are you willing to press charges against Lisa Matthews for kidnapping? I looked at David, who was staring at the floor. Will it help get Emma back? It'll give us legal grounds to remove the child from her custody immediately. Then yes, I'll press charges. David's head snapped up. Sarah, please. Don't do this to Lisa. Don't do this to Lisa? I stared at him in disbelief. David, she has my baby. Our baby. The baby I grew inside my body for 9 months. She doesn't know that, he said desperately. In her mind, she's just taking her own child home. Because you lied to her. I screamed. Because you've been lying to everyone. What lies? Detective Morrison asked sharply. I looked at David, waiting for him to answer. When he didn't, I did it for him. He's been planning this whole thing, I said. The coincidence of Lisa giving birth at the same hospital on the same night, with the babies getting switched, none of it was coincidence. Is that true, Mr. Martinez? The detective asked. David was silent for a long moment. Then, quietly, he said, yes. The confession that followed was like watching a carefully constructed house of cards collapse in slow motion. David told us everything, how he'd been in contact with Lisa throughout both pregnancies, how they'd planned for her to give birth at the same hospital, how he'd arranged for the mix-up. In the nursery with the help of a night shift nurse who owed him a favor from his days working at the hospital. You work at the hospital? I asked, another piece of the puzzle falling into place. Used to, he said. In administration. That's how I knew about the embryo mix-up 8 months ago. I saw the incident report. And you didn't tell me. I didn't know how to tell you. I didn't even know if it was real or just a paperwork error. So you decided to conduct your own little experiment, Detective Morrison said, her voice flat with disgust. It wasn't an experiment, David protested. I wanted to understand what had happened. I wanted to know if the babies were really switched, genetically speaking. By switching them again, I said. By having Lisa take Emma home while you stayed here with Mia. I thought maybe, if you bonded with Lisa's baby, with your biological daughter, then maybe you'd understand why I couldn't just abandon her and her mother. The room went dead silent. You thought I'd understand why you cheated on me and got your ex-girlfriend pregnant? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. I thought you'd understand that families are complicated, he said desperately. That sometimes we don't get to choose who we love or who needs us. You're right, I said. We don't get to choose. But we do get to choose what we do about it. And you chose to lie, cheat, and steal babies. I didn't steal. Stop, Sophia said suddenly. Just stop talking. We all turned to look at her. She was standing now, having pulled herself together with visible effort. This is insane, she said. All of this. The lying, the cheating, the baby swapping, it's completely insane. But you know what the most insane part is? She looked around the room at all of us. The most insane part is that there are 2 innocent babies caught in the middle of this mess. And while we're standing here arguing about who did what to whom, one of them is with a woman who has no legal right to her. And the other is in a hospital bassinet listening to the adults who are supposed to protect her scream at each other. She was right, and we all knew it. So here's what's going to happen, Sophia continued, her voice stronger now. Detective Morrison is going to arrest Lisa Matthews for kidnapping, and we're going to get Emma back. Then Sarah and I are going to figure out what's best for both of these babies, and David is going to shut up and stay out of it unless we specifically ask for his input. Sophia, I said, you don't have to. Yes, I do, she interrupted. Because these are my daughters we're talking about. Both of them. One I carried and one I made. And I'll be damned if I'm going to let anyone, use them as pawns in some twisted game. She turned to Detective Morrison. How long will it take to get a warrant? For kidnapping? With the hospital's cooperation and the documentation we have here? A few hours at most. Then let's do it. Detective Morrison nodded and reached for her radio. I'll call it in now. As she stepped into the hallway to make the call, Sophia turned to me. Sarah, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Okay. Do you want to raise Mia? Your biological daughter. The question I'd been avoiding since this whole nightmare began. I looked at the baby in the bassinet, at the tiny face that somehow looked like both David and me despite the fact that Sophia had carried her. I don't know, I said honestly. Part of me does. She's mine, genetically. But she's also yours in every other way that matters. And Emma? Do you want to raise her even though she's not biologically yours? Yes, I said without hesitation. She's my daughter. I carried her. I felt her kick. I talked to her every night. The DNA doesn't change that. Sophia nodded. That's how I feel about Mia. And that's probably how I should feel about Emma, but I don't. She's a stranger to me. So what do we do? I think, Sophia said carefully, we do something that's never been done before. I think we raise them together. Together how? I don't know yet. But I know that separating them completely feels wrong. They're sisters, Sarah. Biological sisters who were switched before birth. They belong together. And we belong together too, I said, the words surprising me as I said them. We're connected now, whether we like it or not. Whether we like it or not, Sophia agreed. But I think I might like it. Eventually, Detective Morrison returned to the room. We've got a warrant. Units are being dispatched to Lisa Matthews' apartment now. What happens then? I asked. Then we bring Emma back here, and you two start figuring out how to be a family. The DNA test results came back on a Tuesday morning in December, 6 months after the night that changed everything. I held the official document in my hands, reading the words I'd already known were true but somehow needed to see in black and white. Emma Rodriguez Martinez, 99.97% probability of maternity to Sophia Rodriguez, 99.97% probability of paternity to David Martinez. Mia Rodriguez Martinez, 99.97% probability of maternity to Sarah Martinez, 99.97% probability of paternity to unknown donor. Both babies were ours. Both babies were mine and Sophia's, in different ways, through different miracles of science and circumstance. Well, Sophia said, reading over my shoulder. Now it's official. We were sitting in the living room of the house we'd bought together, 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, with a big backyard for the girls to play in when they got older. The decision to move in together had been gradual, born out of necessity and convenience, but growing into something that felt surprisingly natural. Emma was in her bouncer, gurgling happily at the mobile hanging above her. Mia was asleep in Sophia's arms, her tiny fist wrapped around Sophia's finger. At 6 months old, they were already showing distinct personalities. Emma was the easygoing one, content to watch the world go by, while Mia was more demanding, wanting constant attention and interaction. Have you decided what you're going to tell them? Sophia asked. When they're old enough to understand? The truth, I said. All of it. The good, the bad, and the completely insane. Even about David? I glanced toward the kitchen, where David was washing bottles. He'd moved in with us a month ago, after 3 months of family therapy and a trial separation that had nearly ended in divorce. The road back to something resembling trust had been long and difficult, paved with brutal honesty and professional help. Especially about David, I said. He'd been charged with conspiracy to commit kidnapping and child endangerment, charges that were ultimately dropped in exchange for his cooperation in the case against Lisa and the corrupt hospital employee who'd helped orchestrate the switch. Lisa had been sentenced to 2 years probation and community service, with a restraining order keeping her away from all of us. The hospital had settled out of court for an undisclosed sum that would ensure both girls' college educations and then some. I still can't believe this is our life, Sophia said, adjusting Mia against her shoulder. 6 months ago, we were strangers. Now what are we exactly? Co-mothers, I said, using the term our family therapist had coined. Partners in the weirdest parenting arrangement in history. And it works, Sophia said, sounding as surprised as I felt. Somehow, against all odds, it actually works. It did work, though not without its challenges. There have been sleepless nights filled with arguments about feeding schedules and childcare philosophies. There had been moments of jealousy when one baby preferred one mother over the other. There had been the inevitable questions from friends and family about our unconventional arrangement. But there had also been moments of unexpected joy, like the first time Emma had reached for me while Sophia was holding her, or the way Mia's face lit up when she saw Sophia enter her room. There had been shared midnight feedings and tag-team diaper changes. There had been the gradual realization that love wasn't finite, that loving both babies didn't diminish the love for either one. The girls at work think I'm crazy, Sophia said. She'd gone back to her job as a graphic designer when the babies were 4 months old, working part-time while I stayed home, living with my baby's genetic father and his wife, raising our switch daughters together. They think it's some kind of polygamy situation. I laughed. My mom still asks when you're moving out. She can't understand why we don't just trade babies and go our separate ways. Could you do that now? Sophia asked. If someone offered you a clean slate, Emma to you, Mia to me, never see each other again, would you take it? The question was one we'd asked ourselves dozens of times over the past 6 months. In the beginning, it had seemed like the logical solution. Take the babies we'd carried, the ones we'd bonded with during pregnancy, and try to build normal, separate lives. But normal was overrated, and separate was impossible. No, I said without hesitation. I couldn't give up Mia now. She's as much my daughter as Emma is. And I couldn't give up Emma, Sophia replied. She may not feel like mine the way Mia does, but she is mine. The DNA test proves it. David appeared in the doorway, drying his hands on a dish towel. The bottles are ready for tonight's feeding, he said. And I picked up more of that sensitive formula Mia likes. Our relationship with David was complicated, to put it mildly. The betrayal had nearly destroyed us, but therapy had helped us understand that the man who'd orchestrated this elaborate deception wasn't the same man I'd married. That David had been drowning in panic and making increasingly desperate decisions to avoid facing the truth about his affair and its consequences. This David, the one who got up for 3 a.m. feedings without being asked, who researched the best car seats and baby-proofing equipment, who was seeing a therapist twice a week to work through his issues with honesty and commitment. This David was someone I was slowly learning to trust again. Thank you, Sophia said, and I could hear the effort it took for her to keep her voice neutral. Her relationship with David was even more complicated than mine. He wasn't her husband, but he was the father of the baby she'd carried. He wasn't her partner, but he lived in her house and helped raise her children. They'd found a way to coexist peacefully, but forgiveness was still a work in progress. I should start dinner, David said. Sophia, are you staying in tonight? Or do you have plans? Staying in, she replied. Emma's been fussy today. I think she might be teething. It was strange, the domesticity of it all. 6 months ago, I would never have imagined sharing my home with another woman, sharing the care of my children with someone who wasn't their father. But somewhere along the way, Sophia had become more than just the woman caught up in my husband's deception. She'd become my partner in the most important job either of us had ever had. Sarah, Sophia said softly, can I ask you something personal? More personal than the fact that we're raising each other's biological children together? She smiled. Fair point. But this is about David. I tensed. What about him? Do you love him? Still, I mean, after everything that happened. The question caught me off guard, even though I'd been asking it myself for months. I don't know, I said honestly. I love the man I married. I'm not sure if this David, the one who lied and cheated and manipulated all of us, is the same person. But you're trying to make it work. I'm trying to make it work for the girls, I said. They deserve to have their father in their lives, assuming he can become the kind of man they deserve to have as a father. And for yourself? I was quiet for a long moment, watching Emma bat at the toys hanging from her bouncer. I think I'm trying to figure out what love means now. Before all this, love felt simple. You meet someone, you fall in love, you get married, you have babies, you live happily ever after. And now I know that love is more complicated than that. I love Emma, who isn't biologically mine. I love Mia, who I never carried. I'm learning to love you, even though 6 months ago I didn't know you existed. And David, I trailed off. And David, I'm learning, is someone I have to choose to love every day, instead of someone I just automatically love. It's harder, but maybe it's more honest. Sophia nodded thoughtfully. I never thought I'd say this, but I'm grateful for what happened. Grateful? I stared at her. Sophia, your boyfriend secretly had you implanted with my embryo. My husband cheated on me and orchestrated an elaborate baby-switching scheme. How can you be grateful for any of that? Because otherwise, I never would have had Mia, she said simply. And I never would have had Emma. And I never would have had you. Her words hit me with unexpected force. She was right. For all the pain and betrayal and chaos of the past 6 months, the end result was something I couldn't imagine living without now. The girls are lucky, I said. Having 2 mothers who love them completely, and having a father who's learning how to be worthy of them, Sophia added, glancing toward the kitchen where David was preparing dinner. Do you think this can work long-term? I asked. This arrangement, this family we've built. I think, Sophia said, that family isn't about blood or marriage certificates or traditional arrangements. It's about showing up for each other, day after day, even when it's complicated and messy and nothing like what you planned. Emma started fussing in her bouncer, and I reached over to pick her up. She settled immediately against my chest, her tiny body relaxing into the familiar comfort of my arms. She might not share my DNA, but she knew I was her mother. Besides, Sophia continued, look at them. I followed her gaze to where Mia had woken up and was staring intently at Emma, her dark eyes serious and focused. Emma, sensing her sister's attention, turned her head toward Mia and smiled. The first real, intentional smile I'd seen from her. They're sisters, Sophia said softly. Real sisters. And they belong together. All of us belong together. I realized, the truth of it settling over me like a warm blanket. This weird, complicated, impossible family we've accidentally created. Not accidentally, Sophia corrected. We chose this. Every day for the past 6 months, we've chosen this. Chosen each other. Chosen the girls. Chosen to make something beautiful out of something that should have destroyed us. David appeared in the doorway again. Dinner's ready, he said, then paused, looking at the 4 of us. Everything okay? Everything's perfect, I said, and for the first time in 6 months, I meant it completely. As we prepared to move to the dining room, Sophia carrying Mia, me holding Emma, David gathering the bottles and burp cloths, I caught sight of our reflection in the hallway mirror. We looked like a family. Not a traditional family, not the family any of us had planned or expected, but a family nonetheless. 2 mothers, 1 father, 2 daughters who were sisters in every way that mattered. We were proof that love could be more powerful than genetics, more resilient than betrayal, more creative than any blueprint society might offer. The DNA test results were still on the coffee table, official confirmation of what we'd already known. But the real truth wasn't in those laboratory results. The real truth was in the way Emma reached for Sophia when she was tired, and the way Mia smiled when I sang to her. It was in the midnight feedings we shared, and the way we'd learned to anticipate each other's needs. It was in the family we'd chosen to become, against all odds and in spite of all the reasons it shouldn't work. That night, after the girls were asleep and the dishes were done, the three of us sat in the living room going through photo albums we'd been making, one for each girl, documenting their first 6 months of life. The pictures told the story of our unconventional beginning. Hospital photos with confused-looking nurses in the background, family therapy sessions where everyone looked uncomfortable, the gradual transition from strangers to co-parents to something resembling a real family. We should add the DNA results, Sophia suggested. For when they're older. With an explanation? David asked. With the whole story, I said. Everything. The good, the bad, and the miraculous. Because that's what this was, I realized. Not just a cautionary tale about deception and betrayal, but a miracle story about how love could triumph over the worst circumstances, how families could be created in the most unexpected ways, and how two babies could bring together the people who needed each other most, even when none of them knew they needed each other at all. The DNA test had given us scientific proof of our connections, but we'd already discovered something far more important. That being a family had less to do with who shared whose genes and more to do with who showed up, who stayed, and who chose love even when love seemed impossible. Emma and Mia would grow up knowing they were sisters, knowing they were loved by multiple parents, and knowing that families came in all shapes and sizes. They would grow up understanding that sometimes the most beautiful things came from the most complicated beginnings. And maybe that was the greatest gift we could give them. Not just life, but the knowledge that love was limitless, resilient, and capable of creating miracles out of the messiest circumstances imaginable. 6 months after the night that changed everything, we were no longer the same people who had walked into that hospital. We were better, more honest, more grateful, more aware of how precious and fragile and unexpectedly wonderful family could be. The DNA test results would go in the baby books, but they were just footnotes to the real story. The real story was happening every day, in every shared moment, in every choice we made to stay together and make this impossible thing work. And it was working. Against all odds, in defiance of every convention, our family was not just surviving, it was thriving. The babies who had been switched before birth had switched our lives too, transforming us from strangers into something none of us could have imagined, but all of us had needed more than we'd ever known. We were living proof that sometimes the biggest disasters could become the greatest blessings, and that love really could conquer all, even when all included deception, betrayal, medical mix-ups, and the complete appending of everything you thought you knew about family. In the end, the DNA test had confirmed what we'd suspected. Both babies were ours, and we were all exactly where we belonged.